Welcome everyone! After last week's game against Kramnik, I want to show Shirov take on Kramnik's longtime rival and also a very interesting attacking player himself, Veselin Topalov. Let's not waste any time. This was played in Linares in 1998. This time Shirov had white and he opened with e4, c5, Topalov wants to play Sicilian Defense, knight f3, e6, and after d4 we have some kind of open Sicilian, and after cd4, knight d4 and a6 we have the Khan variation of the Sicilian. The pawn on a6 prevents any knight to b5 or bishop to b5 business, and it also prepares a b7 b5 pawn push later on. Often black also plays queen to c7, d6 and knight from b to d7, but there are many ways for black to play. Shirov continued with bishop to d3, and here Topalov played a somewhat rare move. Often black just goes knight to f6 or bishop to c5 here, but Topalov played queen to b6. Now this does have the same idea as bishop to c5. Black wants to dislodge the knight from d4. Knight to b3. The queen retreats. The queen has done her job on b6 and goes to c7, the square the queen usually occupies in this variation. This also stops white from playing e4, e5. Queen e2. Now white may play e4, e5, which Shirov will do later on. Black played knight to f6. And I guess here white can go e5 already, but after knight to d5 and let's say c4, knight to b4, attacking the bishop, and after bishop to e4, black can just go d6, and white has to trade the e-pawn off, so maybe white doesn't gain a whole lot from e4, e5 in this case. Shirov didn't play e5 here, he played knight to c3, d6, discouraging e4, e5 some more, and also preparing knight from b to d7, f4, preparing e4, e5 once again, and after bishop to e7, Shirov did in fact play e5 here. He didn't have to do that, he could also castle, and after, for example, castles a4, helping to prevent b7, b5, therefore b6, which prepares bishop to b7, and here white can be aggressive in another way. He can try rook to f3, and after bishop to b7, go rook to h3, and at some point white will play e5, and then the bishop will also get involved in the attack. But Shirov didn't do that, he played e5 right away, and it is an interesting pawn sacrifice. Topalov took, f takes e5, knight from f to d7, and after bishop to f4 and knight to c6, Shirov sacrificed a pawn after castles, so black is now a pawn up. I guess white's better development is some compensation for it, but it seems that white still has to prove that the sacrifice is good. Now Shirov brought the other rook into the game, good move. Topalov checked, king to h1, and then he took the bishop. Makes sense, it's an open position, so robbing white of the bishop pair cannot be bad. Queen takes, black castled, and after queen to g3, Topalov played king to h8 to avoid any bishop to h6 business. He could also have tried f5, with the idea to go rook to f7 after bishop to h6, and maybe going even bishop to f6 later. Maybe that's also attractive. But he didn't, he went king to h8. And here Shirov did get some initiative. He started with bishop to c7. The queen is pretty short on squares, as you can see. Queen a7, then knight to a4 heading to b6. Topalov went f6, planning to go e5 and activate the light squared bishop. Bishop d6, queen b8, bishop c7. Shirov's bullying the black queen. Queen a7 was played, but he didn't go for a repetition. Here Shirov played knight to b6, but Topalov didn't care much about the rook. He played e5, which is understandable since having the bishop pair in an open position can be better than a rook, even if it's an exchange down, and that especially goes for a rook that stands in the corner and does nothing. Now white did take the exchange, queen takes, and after rook to d1, Topalov played rook to e8, because this way black keeps the bishop pair. If instead bishop to e6 was played, for example, then bishop to d6, and since the bishop is pinned to the rook, black cannot prevent the bishop trade. In the game, Topalov went rook to e8, and after bishop to d6, in this case black can go bishop to d8 and black still has the bishop pair. Knight to c5 came next, b6, knight to e4, the knight will land on an attacking square soon, just watch. Knight to d4 was played next, but here Shirov had a nice move, bishop takes e5. Now the knight is loose and black cannot even take the bishop. If black does take, then there is knight to d6, which will win the rook, because the rook cannot move. If rook to e7, then it's of course mate right away after rook to f8. And if rook to g8, then it's mate like this. So black just has to give up the rook there. Therefore not pawn takes bishop, but knight to f5, saving the knight and counterattacking the queen. Queen to g4, and unfortunately for Topalov, he did make a big mistake here. He played the natural-looking knight to e3, forking all of white's heavy pieces, but clearly he missed Shirov's response. Topalov could have taken the bishop here, and after rook takes knight, bishop takes, queen takes, he could go bishop to e7, which stops any knight to d6 move ever. Now why does knight to d6 still matter? You'll see in a moment. After knight to e3, Shirov just ducked to h5 with the queen, also threatening with queen takes rook checkmate, therefore rook to g8. If black here played g6, then white has this crazy move, rook takes bishop on d8, and the point is that if black takes the queen, then it's checkmate soon. First bishop f6 check, king to g8, then rook takes rook check, king to f7, then knight to d6 check, everything works out, king to g6 only move, and then it's mate after rook to g8, king h6, and knight f7 checkmate. And if here black doesn't take the queen but goes rook takes rook, then it's also mate after rook takes f6 check, and black cannot prevent rook to f8 with double check and mate. Good stuff. Anyway, Topalov played rook to g8, and now Shirov had a retreating move that wins the game, queen to f3. And now you'll see why it was important to stop knight to d6. After black won the rook, taking either rook loses, it doesn't really matter. Shirov played knight to d6, and Topalov in fact resigned. There are multiple threats, knight f7 checkmate, queen takes queen, and simply winning a piece. It could continue with queen to a7, protecting against the biggest threats, but then there's simply knight takes bishop, and after queen to d7, saving the queen, just knight to d6 back, and black loses more material, since if black tries to save the knight with knight takes pawn, then there is queen to d5 with again the threat of knight f7, and after rook to f8, stopping knight f7 check, then simply bishop takes knight, and black would remain a piece down. Very fine game. I especially liked the retreating move queen to f3, since you don't often see retreating moves winning the game. The rest of the game was also pretty dynamic and original, and I guess those two words do describe Shirov's play best. Anyway, I'll cover another great game by Shirov next week. There's more great games in the playlist. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching Chess Student, and take care.